The cattle drive began before the sun crested the horizon. When the prairie was still painted in blue shadows and the air carried a bite sharp enough to wake the dead. Elena Reyes stood over the campfire with her sleeves rolled up, dark hair braided tight down her back, wooden spoon in hand like a weapon. The beans simmered loudly, popping and hissing, as if they, too, had opinions about this journey. She had been hired 3 days earlier in Dodge City Best Camp Cook, this side of the Arkansas River. The ranch owner had said Elena knew better than to trust flattery, but she needed the work. A long drive meant steady pay, and steady pay meant keeping her small boarding house room when winter came. Behind her, boots crunched on dry grass. There, burnt. Elena didn't turn. She didn't need to. She already knew the voice low-clipped and permanently unimpressed. James Walker, trail boss, the man who hadn't smiled once since she'd joined the drive. "They're not burnt," she said evenly. "They're seasoned." James stopped beside the fire. Arms crossed over his chest. Tall, broad-shouldered. The kind of man who looked carved from fence posts and stubbornness. His hat cast a shadow over sharp eyes that scanned the pot like it had personally offended him. "Seasoned beans don't smell like charcoal," he said. Elena finally faced him, lifting the spoon and giving the pot a deliberate stir. "Seasoned beans smell like survival. You want fancy? Go back to town." A few of the cowhands nearby snorted, quickly pretending to be fascinated by their saddles. When James glanced their way, "This drive doesn't run on attitude," James said. "It runs on efficiency. Men need food. They can eat." Elena met his stare without flinching. "And I don't run a kitchen for men who complain before tasting." She scooped a spoonful, blew on it, and tasted it herself. Perfect. Smoky. Rich. With just enough salt. She raised an eyebrow. "You're welcome to try." James hesitated. For half a second, Elena thought he might actually back down. Instead, he took the spoon from her hand and tasted the beans. Silence. The prairie wind whispered through the grass. Horses shifted. Someone coughed. James handed the spoon back there. "Acceptable." Elena smiled, slow and sharp. High praise. He turned to leave, then paused. "Tomorrow, don't overcook them." She watched him walk away, irritation simmering hotter than the fire. Men like James Walker always thought they knew best about trails, about cattle, about people. She'd dealt with his type before. All bark, no listening. Still, she couldn't deny the way his presence lingered, like a storm cloud just beyond the horizon. Later that night, when the men ate their fill and the stars scattered across the sky, Elena cleaned her pots in silence. Laughter drifted from the fire. Someone strummed a guitar badly. The drive had settled into its rhythm. James sat apart from the others, sharpening his knife. Elena noticed he ate every last bean in his tin plate. She smirked as she banked the fire. James approached again, slower this time, less confrontational. "Beans weren't burnt," he admitted. Elena looked up. "Careful, trail boss. Sounds like an apology." He huffed. "Don't get used to it." She tied her braid tighter, standing to face him. "Then, don't get used to good cooking." For a moment, they stood there to stubborn souls under an endless sky. Sparks snapping between them that had nothing to do with the fire. James nodded once and walked away. Elena watched him go, her smile fading into something thoughtful. This drive was going to be long. And somehow she suspected the real trouble wouldn't come from the cattle at all. Morning broke hard and fast, the sun dragging itself over the prairie like it had somewhere important to be. Elena was already awake, coaxing the fire back to life while the rest of the camp groaned into consciousness. She poured water into the coffee pot, her movements practiced, steady. If there was one thing cowhands cared about more than food, it was coffee, and she refused to give James Walker another reason to look at her like a problem he hadn't solved yet. The smell of brewing coffee drifted through camp, rich and bitter. Men stirred, stretching sore backs, boots scuffing toward the fire like moths to flame. James appeared last, as usual. Trail boss meant sleeping light and waking lighter. He accepted a tin cup without a word. Took a long drink, canned, immediately coughed. Fire, he muttered. You trying to peel paint with this? Elena didn't look up from the skillet, where bacon crackled. Coffee's meant to wake you up, not tuck you back into bed. A few of the men chuckled. James shot them a look sharp enough to cut rope, then glared at Elena. It's strong. She finally faced him, spoon resting on her hip. You want weak coffee? Add water. He studied her for a moment, as if deciding whether the argument was worth the effort. Then, annoyingly, he took another drink. Figures, he said. Stubborn cook. Takes one to know one, she shot back. The drive moved out shortly after, cattle lowing as they were pushed into motion. Elena rode in the supply wagon, watching the herd stretch across the land like a living river. She'd been on drives before, but never one this long. Never with a trail boss who seemed to think irritation was a leadership style. By midday, the sun was relentless. Dust coated everything: hair, clothes, lungs. When they stopped to water the cattle, Elena climbed down to prepare a quick meal: biscuits, dried meat, and the last of yesterday's beans. James dismounted nearby, wiping sweat from his brow. He watched her hands work, efficient, confident, not rushed, not careless. You've done this before, he said. Elena glanced at him, surprised by the lack of accusation in his tone. More times than I can count. Most cooks don't last, he said. They quit, or slow us down. She handed a plate to a passing cowhand. And I don't quit. James nodded slightly, as if filing the information away. Silence settled between them, not hostile this time, just quiet. That night, the weather turned. Dark clouds rolled in fast, wind snapping tents and rattling wagons. Rain came down in sheets, soaking bedrolls and tempers alike. Elena fought the wind to keep the fire alive, her hands numb, hair plastered to her face. Cleave it, James called, over the storm. We'll eat cold. She shook her head. Men need hot food in this. He strode over, grabbing a tarp to block the wind. Together, without a word, they worked to shield the fire. His shoulder brushed hers, solid, warm, despite the cold rain. Elena felt it like a jolt. They succeeded, barely. Later, as the men ate steaming stew under dripping hats, morale lifted, laughter returned. Someone called Elena a miracle worker. James stood beside her, rainwater dripping from his hat brim. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. She shrugged. It's my job. No, he said. It's more than that. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passing between them. Respect, maybe. Or the beginning of it. The storm eased after midnight. Elena sat by the dying fire, staring into the embers. James approached, offering a tin cup. Coffee, he said. She took it, surprised. Looks weak, he smirked. Just barely. Compromise. Elena smiled into the steam, warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the drink. The sparks between them hadn't burned out. They'd only just begun. The land changed as the drive pushed west. Flat prairie, giving way to rolling hills, grass thinning, water harder to find. With each mile, the cattle grew restless, and so did the men. Tempers flared easily under the relentless sun and long days in the saddle. Elena felt it too. She rose before dawn, cooked through heat and dust, and slept light as the wind. Still, she held her ground. The food stayed hot, the coffee stayed strong, and slowly, without fanfare, the men stopped complaining. All, except one. You're pushing them too hard, Elena said one evening as she stirred a pot of stew thick with potatoes and beef. James looked up from the map, spread across a crate. Firelight carved sharp lines across his face. Storm's coming. We need higher ground. They're tired, she pressed. So are your men. His jaw tightened. You're the cook, and you're human, she shot back. Or did you forget that part? Silence fell hard between them. A few nearby cowhands pretended not to listen, suddenly very interested in the stars. James folded the map. You don't see what I see. Then, Maybe you should start explaining instead of barking orders, Elena said. He stood, towering over her for a moment. She wondered if she'd gone too far, but she didn't back down. Finally, James exhaled slowly. If we don't reach the ridge by tomorrow night, the river floods. We lose cattle, maybe lives. Elena's anger cooled, replaced by understanding. Then feed them well. Let them rest tonight. You'll get more out of them tomorrow. He studied her, firelight reflecting in his eyes. You always, this bossy, only when someone needs it. A corner of his mouth twitched. We'll rest an extra hour. It wasn't a victory, but it was something. The next day, the storm hit hard. Thunder cracked the sky open, spooking the herd. Cattle scattered hooves, tearing up the ground as rain turned dust into mud. Move, James shouted, racing ahead. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs as she clung to the wagon. Chaos erupted, men yelling, horses rearing, cattle bolting. Then she saw it, a young cowhand thrown from his horse, pinned beneath a fallen animal. Without thinking, Elena jumped down, skirts soaked and heavy. She ran toward him, slipping in the mud. James, she screamed. He turned, saw them, and swore. He dismounted and charged through the rain, muscles straining as he heaved the animal aside. Together, they dragged the shaken boy free. The storm raged around them, but for a moment, everything narrowed to breath and heartbeat. You hurt? James demanded. The cowhand shook his head, wide-eyed. Relief washed through Elena so fast, her knees nearly gave out. James steadied her, hands firm on her arms. Are you crazy? He yelled over the thunder. You could have been killed. So could he, she shouted back. Their faces were inches apart, rain streaking down both of them. Something fierce and undeniable sparked in James's eyes. You don't think? He said. She laughed, breathless. Neither do you. The storm passed by dusk, leaving the land soaked and shining. Camp that night was quieter, subdued. Men ate in grateful silence, aware of how close disaster had come. James sat beside Elena at the fire, closer than ever before. You were brave today, he said. She stared into the flames. I was scared, he nodded. Brave enough. Their hands brushed as he passed her the coffee pot. This time, neither pulled away. The trail was unforgiving. The days were hard, but somewhere between danger and dust, Elena and James had begun walking the same path. After the storm, the drive changed, not in ways that could be marked on a map, but in the quiet spaces, the pauses before James gave orders, in the way Elena noticed him, watching the herd with a weight that hadn't been there before. Leadership looked heavier now, more human. They made camp near a stand of cottonwoods. 2 nights later, the river finally behind them, and the ridge safely crossed. The air was cooler, the stars sharp and close, like they'd dipped lower, just to listen. Elena cooked slower that evening, letting the stew simmer while the men settled in. Laughter returned, easy and genuine. Someone played cards. Someone else sang badly, on purpose. James stayed near the fire. You're spoiling them, he said, nodding toward the pot. Elena smiled. They earned it. So did you. She glanced at him, surprised. That sounds like praise. Don't get used to it, he said, but there was no edge left in his voice. They ate side by side, shoulders almost touching. The fire popped, sparks rising into the dark like restless thoughts. For the first time since the drive began, Elena felt something loosen inside her chest. Later, as the men drifted off to their bedrolls, Elena scrubbed her pots in the river. The moon reflected off the water, pale and steady. She didn't hear James approach until he spoke. You ever think about settling somewhere? He asked. She straightened slowly. Sometimes. Where? Anywhere that doesn't move, every sunrise. She smiled faintly. You, James, skipped a stone across the water. I don't stay long in one place. Why? He hesitated. Hard to lead when you care too much. Elena studied him, seeing past the trail boss and into the man beneath the weight of decisions. The quiet fear of failure. Caring doesn't make you weak, she said. It makes you careful. He looked at her, then really looked. You're not like the others. She laughed softly. I should hope not. They walked back to camp together. The fire had burned low, embers glowing red. Without thinking, James shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. You'll get cold. She inhaled the scent of leather and smoke. Thank you. They sat in silence, the kind that didn't demand words. Elena felt the pull between them, now no longer sparks, but something deeper, steadier. James, she said quietly, what happens after the drive? He stared into the fire. I hadn't thought that far. She nodded, though a small ache formed in her chest. Figures, he turned to her. What about you? I'll find another job, another fire. She met his eyes. That's what I do. The fire shifted, a log collapsing inward. James reached out, his hand brushing hers. This time, neither pretended it was an accident. I don't want this to just be the trail, he said. Her breath caught. Then don't let it be. He leaned closer, hesitation warring with want. Elena closed the distance, pressing her lips to his slow, uncertain, but real. The kiss tasted of coffee and campfire smoke, and something dangerously close to hope. When they pulled apart, the night seemed to hold its breath. We should get some rest, James said, voice rough. Elena nodded, standing. Tomorrow's another long day. As she walked away, wrapped in his coat, Elena knew one thing for certain. The hardest part of the drive wasn't behind them. It was waiting at the end. The final stretch of the drive arrived quieter than Elena expected. No storms, no scattered cattle, just long miles beneath an open sky and the steady rhythm of hooves, moving toward an ending neither of them had spoken aloud. The town waited beyond the next rise wooden buildings. Smoke curling from chimneys, the promise of rest and separation wrapped in the same horizon. Elena packed her supplies with careful hands that morning, folding cloths, stacking tins. James watched from a distance, pretending to check the herd while memorizing the way she moved. The way she paused, as if trying to slow time itself. When the town finally came into view, the men cheered. Laughter rose, plans were made, whiskey baths, cards. The drive was done. By dusk, the cattle were delivered, pay exchanged, hands shaking in relief. One by one the crew drifted off into the town, boots hitting boardwalks, voices fading. Elena stood beside the wagon, suddenly unsure where she belonged. James approached, hat in his hands. Without it, he looked younger, more vulnerable. You did good work, he said. So did you, she replied. Silence stretched between them, thick and fragile. I've been offered another drive, James said finally. Starts in 2 weeks. Elena nodded slowly. I figured. He took a breath. Come with me. Her heart skipped. As the cook, as whatever you want to be, he said. Partner, home. His voice softened. I'm tired of leading alone. Elena searched his face for doubt, and found none, only hope and fear standing side by side. She thought of all the fires she'd cooked, beside all the roads she'd walked alone. I don't want to be someone who's only passing through, she said. Neither do I, James answered. That's why I'm asking. She smiled then, the kind that comes from deep certainty. All right, trail boss, but no complaints about the beans. He laughed, a real full laugh she'd never heard before. Deal. They walked through town together, hand in hand. They didn't rush. There was no need. For the first time, the road ahead didn't feel lonely, felt shared. That night, they sat by a small fire outside the stable, stars scattered overhead. Elena leaned against James's shoulder, listening to the quiet settle around them. The trail had tested them. Burnt beans, bruised egos, storms, and stubborn pride. But love, she realized, wasn't found at the start of the journey. It was built mile by mile, fire by fire, until two people chose the same ending. And as the fire burned low and the future waited patiently beyond the dark, Elena knew she'd found more than a job. She'd found home. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.